So I think like every other Jew in the States, October 7th was a real tipping point. To me, it's when the regular people, when those people come out and cheer for the hate and do nothing to stand against it. To me, that's the time to go. They would take my scooters and my bikes and come over and drop their children at my house because they had to run an errand and they needed a Zionist baby killer to babysit their babies, which is mind-blowing to me. I'm good as a free babysitter, but I'm not good enough just as a human in your town to protect.
What about work? How did this manifest at work?
Ooh.
Bryce Gruber is an American journalist. She has worked in American television, digital content, and now Canadian publishing. After October 7th, like many Jews around the world, she started to feel the impact of the anti-Semitism around her, and she recently, because of that, decided to move her family to Israel. What's fascinating about Gruber's story, though, is how universal a story it is to the Jewish people. And as a fellow journalist myself, who is also this month, in fact, moving her family to Israel, I felt compelled to reach out. Gruber very generously responded to me, and that led to this conversation, in which we talk about the irrationality of anti-Semitism, why the world reaction to October 7th hit us so hard psychologically, the culture shock that comes with making a sudden move to Israel, the reality of accommodating Israeli refugees in your city, and how her family is making this move work for them. So join us in this candid conversation and a look into what some Jewish people like us are talking about, unfiltered in private.
Bryce Gruber, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so your story really hit a nerve with me because I feel like we have a lot of similar things in common. You are right now in Eilat, southern tip of Israel. You moved from Canada or from the States?
From the States. I moved from New York, but I kind of have deep ties to Canada because of my work.
Let's start with what inspired you to make that big decision.
Number one, we have a lot of family here. And I think there's nothing more important than being with family, but probably bigger and bolder than any of that is the anti-Semitism that is kind of erupting like wildfire all over the US. And it's something that my own children experienced in New York. It's something I experienced in both New York and Canada. And the combination of it feeling kind of ugly in the States and knowing that we have this beautiful, welcoming, loving family here in Israel was enough to kind of push us over the edge.
You had everything set up for you in New York. You are also a journalist, and you worked in a big show called New York Live in New York. Can you tell me about what happened? That's before. Take us a couple steps back from the moment that you decided to move.
So I think like every other Jew in the States, October 7th was a real tipping point. We saw Jew hatred just coming to the surface in ways that maybe a lot of us didn't really understand how deep it was. And my own children, throughout the year, we saw my daughter's 6th grade class incorrect and very purposely incorrect maps of the Middle East being distributed in her social studies class. My then 5th grade son was on the school bus, and a bunch of his friends with kids named Anthony, who grew up around Jewish kids and knew exactly what Jewish kids were like. They felt comfortable telling him on the bus that all the Jews are going to die, you're included, Avi, your siblings are all going to die, and you deserve it. And between just hateful propaganda and young children feeling emboldened and just comfortable spewing really hateful words, it was just kind of too much. I think we realized that the home we felt like we knew in the US was not really the home that we knew. And you can get really comfortable in other places, but it doesn't mean you should get really comfortable.
Those were some shocking incidents that must have really thrown you. What was the first thing that came to your mind when you first heard of those incidents?
I obviously went straight to the school. I went to both county and state authorities about the worksheets that were being distributed in my kids' public schools. And I was promised at every level of government that they would look into it. They acknowledge how wrong it is. We don't want this to happen again. How terrible. And nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. Nothing at all happened. When my kids were told they were going to die on the bus, nothing happened. And then in the spring, there was, you can call them protesters. I think they're terrorists. A group of protesters shut down the one main road in our town that would allow the elementary school kids to get to school. And they were screaming terrible things. Jews are baby killers, Zionists are genocidal, like what, all the stuff that you see. My 7-year-old was exposed to this. He was obviously shaken very badly. Everyone in the town saw what happened. And when I published it, when I shared with the New York Post what happened, and they ran a story about it with videos, the school administration said, oh, it never happened. It wasn't quite like that. It's not really that big of a deal. And that was really kind of the impetus for us. We realized when terrible things were happening and all of the authority figures were looking the other way and saying, it's not really such a problem that we care about. That was enough for us to say, hey, we really need to look at some other options, and maybe it's time to go home being Israel. And I think many, many other North American Jews are having the very same conversations right now.
Yeah, I was going to say the conversation that we're having right now with each other is the conversation that a lot of people are having right now in private, which is that question of when you think about, 1930s Germany, what is the tipping point where you say, we got to go? For you, that was the bus, the school?
The school and the protesters shutting down the whole town to the point where kids were not allowed out for recess. It had gotten dangerous enough that nobody was allowed out in the schoolyard. If we're at a point where it's too dangerous for kids to go and do recess and play on the swing set and climb up a plastic ladder, I'm so sorry. It's not the right thing. It's not the right place. And especially if nobody is doing anything to make it better or safer. What's more disturbing is that in that incident, I came out to try and get my kids out of school because I saw this kind of spiraling. And I saw so many of the regular neighbors, people I've seen at the supermarket, people I run into at the gas station, they were coming and cheering, and I have videos of them cheering for these people screaming the most hateful things, chaining themselves to buildings, chaining themselves to the roads, to trees, that like everything to disrupt day-to-day life for the children, for the families in the town. To me, it's when the regular people, the, Nancy Smith, who lives on Route 375, which is the way to school, when those people come out and cheer for the hate and do nothing to stand against it, to me, that's the time to go, when you see your neighbors turning on you.
That really hits at a deep spot psychologically for Jews, I think, because we've been told these stories about, how things turned on a dime before the Holocaust, and seeing the people that that were turning against you and you didn't know where you stood with them, or you knew where you stood with them.
Yeah, and it was our neighbors, people that we had play dates with, people that, were in my home and I never locked my doors and they knew how to get into my garage, and they would take my scooters and my bikes and come over and drop their children at my house because they had to run an errand and they needed a Zionist baby killer to babysit their babies, which is mind-blowing to me. I'm good as a free babysitter, but I'm not good enough just as a human in your town to protect.
That's disgraceful. I'm so sorry that happened to you. What about work? How did this manifest at work?
Ooh.
So wait, tell us
naming names.
Well, tell us the trajectory first of all. You worked in TV, then you worked in newspapers. Okay.
Yeah, I worked you know how it goes in media that, well, you're one of the few people, you are an actual unicorn where you stayed in one place for over 20 years. You were the only person I have ever heard of in this industry that has gotten to do that, because I feel like this industry has more turnover than McDonald's, but I don't know. You are the unicorn who made it happen.
Well, Philadelphia is a very unique market. That's why it was really shocking when it happened to me. But anyway, so you moved around to a lot of different places.
Yes. So I started, in my 20s, I was primarily on air. I think we all know that at some point, women in on-air positions age out in their 30s, whether they like it or not, or you don't get the money that you used to get, or whatever it is. So at some point, most of us pivot to something else that we do in the industry fairly well. So I went into digital content. I was at Reader's Digest and Taste of Home and Family Handyman for a while. And then more recently, I went to the largest privately held Canadian publisher, whose name shall not be mentioned. And I was shocked, really, really shocked by their response after October 7th, shocked by their treatment of me as an outwardly Jewish person. I don't post anything hateful or mean to any group of people on the internet because I don't feel those things. So I was really shocked when my prior employer made it very clear to me that being outwardly Jewish was bad for business. They don't want it. It's not popular. And I had two choices. Number one, I could keep my job, but not be publicly associated with my work online, basically removing my title from social media, everything from LinkedIn to, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And I would also have to not be publicly Jewish. I would have to remove that piece of my personality from online in case people figured out, hey, it's the same Bryce Gruber that writes and manages this content for this big magazine or that big magazine.
They asked you to rewrite your socials, to change your social media?
Yeah. This was the very beginning of November, so we're just a few weeks into the war. And I was managing all of the shopping content for a portfolio of very popular magazines. One of the editors-in-chief sent a complaint to the owners of the publishing company saying she didn't think it was popular or fair or nice or a good look for the magazines to be associated with an open Zionist. Yeah. Now I got a call from one of
takes my breath away.
Yeah.
It's like Zionist means Jew.
Right. Well, this particular lady has since exited the company and since exited the publishing world. So I felt like if I left her alone and I just dealt with the owners, we would find some common ground, things would be fine, we would move on. That did not happen. I got a call later that morning. The emails start going around at like 10 o'clock in the morning. And by around noon, I had gotten a phone call from one of the owners saying, you better remove everything from your profiles. And there was nothing hateful. It was like, I have a picture of myself and my husband draped in an Israeli flag saying, we're remembering all of those we know and lost from October 7th, because every Jew on the planet knows someone. The Bebas babies, their uncle is one of our closest friends. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like every person is attached to what happened in Israel, whether you live there or it's your direct family or not. So
I want to interject and tell people that like 16 million Jews in the world out of 8 billion people, if there are 1,200 murdered in one spot in Israel, yes, there's absolutely going to be connections.
Yeah. If it's not your cousin, it's your cousin's cousin. If it's not your cousin's cousin, it's the person you went to camp with. You didn't go to camp with them. You used to work with them. It's something. There is no more than 2 degrees of separation between any random Jew and one of those people who lost their lives on October 7th or was kidnapped. And I think people really don't get that it's no more than 2 degrees of separation. It just isn't. We're all connected. So I was really blown away by that. We'll call him my boss, gets on the phone. He starts telling me this. And I said to him, you're calling me and for a fact, my husband just got on a plane 2 days ago to fly back to Israel. I'm here in my home with my children alone, terrified for my husband, terrified for my extended family. What my entire community is going through right now. And you're going to tell me this? And he said, well, yeah, that's the way it goes. I said, and would you be willing to let me walk? because who's going to make your money? Now, most people in publishing know that commerce content teams pay the bills. And he was like, no, let's not, we don't have to get ahead of ourselves. We don't want to lose any money here. You just have to do what feels comfortable and popular for our brands. And,
What
to me,
does that mean?
yeah, the writing was on the wall then. It was really uncomfortable. I stuck it out for another several months, partially because I had hired people to work for me. There were other people's careers who, were counting on me to be there. If all the money just disappeared, what would those nice people do who didn't deserve any, BS? So I took my time. I continued to go through the motions, trying to talk these things out, saying, hey, this is not right. It's not ethical. This is not cool. Maybe you had like a moment where you did not see clearly, but you are going to come around. By the beginning of May, it may have been the end of April or beginning of May, many months had gone by. It was very clear they were not going to come around. There was going to be no resolution. Things were really escalating across the US and Canada. The publisher had continued to publish really troubling content and making the very few Jewish employees feel incredibly uncomfortable along the way.
What do you mean by troubling content?
Well, again, I don't want to name the exact titles, but at some point in an unrecorded way, I will happily share a few links that will make you go, oh, look at that. They told you can't be Jewish, but then they published this.
All right, so they're shocking you with what they're publishing, and you're connected to this publication. And then at what point do you realize I got to go to Israel?
Yeah, well, the other thing is they had also basically done a company-wide fundraiser for the Red Cross of Palestine when it was 1,200 Jews who were just butchered. And the handful of other Jews at the company, and there are very few, we all kind of looked at each other and were like, between that, my kids' school, what was happening in the town, and then my mother-in-law was really, really ill, and we knew she was kind of at the end of life. We said, that's it. That's enough. We're done. And we started to look at the possibility of going. And then on a day that nobody expected, my mother-in-law passed away, and my husband booked a ticket to Israel. You know how it is when you're Jewish, you're burying right away. So he booked his ticket. He got one other ticket, because there was only one other ticket on the flight at that point, for one of our children. And I told him, you go, do everything you need to do, say everything you need to say, be a part of everything, do the whole Shabbat, be with your family, have every moment that you need. I will be here. I will pack up the house. When you come back, you will finish packing up the house with me. And that's it. We're done. That was 32 days ago that his mother died. He came back 12 days after she passed away. We finished packing up the house, got it rented out, and here we are in Israel. We've been here almost 2 weeks now.
I'm noticing that this is not a unique story, that you talk to people and people are realizing we got to go. We got to go to the place that's the safest to us spiritually, which is Israel, even though it is a place of war. Speaking of war, how are you feeling right now? You're in the southern part of Israel right now, in a port city where you just told me that you saw thousands of American troops show up. What's going on with you? What are you seeing? What's happening?
Everybody is talking about it here. By the time you publish this, maybe everybody will know. But right now, it's like the big news here that the Red Sea is filling up with friendly strangers. The British warships are coming into the Mediterranean. The American warships are filling up the Red Sea. I suppose everybody is expecting another Star Wars extravaganza like the one that happened in April. We'll see. The overall feeling, if you talk to people here, is somewhat nervous, but also screw it, we'll be okay. And I think it's because it's like such a long and prolonged war. First of all, this is unprecedented. Wars don't go for 9 and 10 months in Israel. This has never happened before. And I think everybody's just got some
Except
level
for the
of
War of Independence.
Yeah.
That was bloody 2-year war. But since then, no. And people are calling this Israel's War of Independence, Second War of Independence.
Yeah. I think You know what? So I'm going to rephrase. I think this generation, our generation,
Yeah.
does not have a strong sense of familiarity with anything this drawn out, for good or for bad, depending on how you take that. So I think people are mentally and emotionally a little exhausted. And I think to some degree that may be good, because now we're probably getting to like the pimple popping stage of this war, where it's maybe the worst part, but everybody is like calloused and they've got scar tissue, and it's not quite as dramatic as it was in the fall.
Are people expecting Iran to send like all those rockets over and then for all of Israel's friends to help defend it?
I think it depends on who it is and who you talk to. I speak to, I don't want to say anyone's name because I don't know what the security situation, better than me, but there's someone I'm very close with who works in the port in a very high level, and this person is very concerned. Then there's a neighbor here who I don't want to say I'm good friends with, but we talk in the elevator, and they seem to not give a damn. They feel like whatever, it'll be what it'll be, and then we'll move on. Everyone is sort of agreeing on get a bunch of bottled water, get a bunch of snacks, get some stuff to do, some games to play, because you may be in that bomb shelter for a long time. And you're not going to want to be real bored in there. And phones don't work terribly well in the Mamad.
And you're still choosing to stay in Israel at this point.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, that I think only Jewish friends, and not all of Jewish friends, but a good portion of Jewish friends, and I'm assuming you are one of those Jewish friends, I think at least half the Jews have the same feeling on that, which is you would rather feel unsafe with your family, your extended family, the people will keep you alive around you, rather than the feeling of being unsafe in a country where who the hell knows what your neighbor is going to do. And I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, I won't speak for any other Jew, but for me, I would rather have a missile pointed at me with all of my family around than be in Woodstock, New York, where I know all my neighbors are haters and will happily put lawn signs up to tell me how much they hate my existence.
I think what people that are maybe not Jewish don't understand is that part of the Jewish story is that if you are here, if you are Jewish, it is only because somebody in your family down the line decided it was time to leave.
My own family is a mixture, I think, like much of modern Israel, where there are some Ashkenaz people in the family tree and a lot of Mizrahi people in the family tree. And so it's very interesting when you think about the Ashkenaz families, there's a lot of overlap where it's someone was put on a boat out of Europe in the 1930s or 40s to escape the Nazis. And very often they were shoving. I have a great uncle who got on a boat at about 10 years old. It was a 3-week trip. He was at the bottom of a boat, and he's now one of those recorded voices on museum walls. Also, there's the Mizrahi feeling of running is much more recent. It's my parents' generation. It's our generation, depending on which country you came from, it's recent memory. Even my husband, as a small child, lived in Egypt. At some point, he was like 7 or 8 years old, and it was time to pack everything up and go. And that's how they ended up in Eilat. It was like walking distance from, Sinai. I think about my in-laws, my mother-in-law who just passed away, basically walked out of Africa from Morocco to get here. My father-in-law is still working through his emotional stuff, and I love this man more than anything, and he is the best grandfather and a really wonderful dad to his children. But every person comes with their their emotional stuff and their baggage, and his is very much from being this teenager that had to leave everything behind because his sister was being kidnapped so they could escape in the middle of the night, to be moved to refugee camps where they lived without running water and no toilets, and it was a one-room shack for years. And he didn't get to finish an education or do any of these things, even though I'm telling you, this man is so bright, it is ridiculous.
We all have that in our family history, that they made it through because they left somewhere or they were kicked out somewhere. They're forced to leave, or it was leave or convert, or it was escape or die.
Other things that I think are so mind blowing also that people do not consider when you think about even just like the population of Jews, that there were many Jewish families who, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, is an only child or was an only child. That is extraordinarily unusual for the times. Why? Because they didn't know if it was going to be safe to have another kid, if they were going to be able to feed another kid. And it's our generation too. You think about our Persian friends who were running in the late 1970s, early 1980s. I was born in 1984. I have plenty of friends who came as babies, like as refugees to the US. I'm just blown away by the combination of people not realizing that children run in every generation as Jews, or they grow up in these sort of abbreviated families because the families are unsure of what the future holds and they just don't know if they can protect or feed more. So they don't have more.
Right. I think about one of the stories in my family that I've heard of is that my grandparents' siblings, one of my grandparents on my father's side had, she was one of eight, and she had these two younger brothers that were like, I don't know, 9, 10, and they escaped the Nazis on bicycles. They got on their bikes and they fled and they never came back. And I have kids that age. I have a 9-year-old, and I can't imagine putting them on a bike and being like, ride your bike out of the country and goodbye. Like, that's it. Good luck.
That's the most massive level of faith, like I love my kids more than anything, but like I have to really be on top of them. Brush your teeth, make your bed, load the dishwasher the right way, all of these things. And if you think about just the level of faith it takes to send your 9-year-old kids out in a time where there's no communication and you're unsure of everything and you just say, just go, do your best to live, that's terrifying.
There was no cell phones. There was no way to communicate. They had to like write letters to each other and find their family members. That's the crazy part. Yeah. And we're, you know, I think that the Jewish experience and the stories that we've been told is really shaping what people are feeling today. So when people say things like, oh, hide your Jewishness or get over it already or whatever they're saying, you're like, oh my gosh, wait a second. This is traumatic because all of a sudden you hit that button on these memories that I've heard from when I was a kid, or these stories that have been told to me of like, we're getting into the danger zone. And so people are making decisions like you made and like I'm about to make. I don't think it's so uncommon, but because we're such a small population, it's like, whoa, what is happening?
Yeah.
Because people don't hear about it.
The only other thing that I think is really important, and I really don't care what anyone's personal politics are, but I do think from a political standpoint, this is a really fascinating time to live in. And whoever it is, I don't care which candidate, I'm open to any candidate who makes me feel safe, to be honest. There is an opportunity to either have the Jews of the US, like you and me, walk out the door. And that has much bigger ripple effects and much bigger implications than just a few million people leaving, or a few 100,000 people leaving. But, my understanding is that American Aliyah paperwork is at like 20,000 for the year or something like that, which is pretty significant from the US. This is not Ethiopia or Sudan or, even quite as bad as France. Politicians either have this opportunity to make things really right with the Jewish community or to make things really, really bad with the Jewish community. And I think we're right at that point in history where we're going to see who goes in which direction. And I would be lying if I said that I could tell you which way and how it's going to go. It's that uncertainty that made me feel like I'm not going to wait to see it play out. I'm gone.
Have you been to the Ani Museum in Tel Aviv?
No.
So the Ano Museum is the Museum of the Jewish People. It used to be called the Diaspora Museum, and they have a section which talks about Jewish life in the diaspora, and they have this like video that plays, and they show like in the 70s or 80s, like what the population was then and what is the population now. And it very clear by the graph. You can see which countries are hospitable to Jews and which countries are not hospitable to Jews. And you can see if there's a little bit of a difference, then like that's how the anti-Semitism is. If there's a huge disparity between what things were like, decades ago and now, then that means the anti-Semitism is really bad. We were just there in March, my son and and I remember seeing like the American graph, and I was a little bit surprised that it was like a little down or something. I was like, oh, it should be like jumped up. But the country that really obviously jumped up significantly in all of them was Israel, because that's where everybody went, because there's nowhere else to go. But
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I highly recommend checking it out. The Anna
Yeah.
Museum has like this. It's just it's the story of the Jewish people and the story of the Jewish people around the world. And it talks about culture and all kinds of other things. But that one graph was really striking to me. Like you can really tell a lot about hospitality of a country to its Jewish population based on immigration numbers or emigration numbers.
I agree. I think we're going to see some new charts in the next few years, and they're going to be really interesting charts if you like to look at data.
I think so. I really think so. Because I'll tell you, like several months ago, I didn't expect to be on this journey. And I don't think that you expected it either.
Yeah, it was something that was just being tossed around. For us to have done it in a very concrete way and just decided to kind of not look back, that was surprising.
Have you also been thinking, like, are we friends? Like when you look at your list of friends and you're like, oh, that not knowing is really saddening, I think.
Oh, you know what? I think you're probably a better person than I am, because I got to a point where, my husband was flying back and forth to Israel a lot throughout the fall and the winter and the spring. And kind of everybody in the neighborhood knew about it, because for stretches of weeks at a time, my husband would not be around. And, people would make remarks, not terrible remarks, but they'd be like, oh, things that would make me feel a little uncomfortable. And I would say by the time December rolled around, we were probably 6, 8, 10 weeks into the war. I think I just got a little bolder and I was tired. And I would ask people point blank, what are your feelings on it? What do you feel about me? And it was, my 3 middle children have very close birthdays. So very often we combine their birthday parties. So there was another one of the times Yosef was in Israel. It was November. And we had one of our neighbors down the road. I mean, really like 6 houses away. Our kids did scooters and bikes and everything together. They came over for barbecues. They would swim in our pool. And the mom dropped her kid off at the movie theater for my children's birthday party. Said, oh, how's Yosef doing in Israel? I said, oh, he's okay. Thanks for asking. She said, we've really been thinking a lot about your family, and we really like your family, and I want good things for you. And it's not you guys, it's just the Zionists.
What?
I was so taken aback as I'm passing out like the little bags of popcorn, the kid-size ones, and each kid is getting a superhero cape because it's the Marvel movie that we all went to go see. And there was one other Jewish parent there, and I will not fully name them, just a lovely Mr. Cohen, okay? This neighbor walked away. Mr. Cohen saw my eyes. And I am not like a real big hugger of people that I'm not like super close with. He just came up to me, he gave me a big hug, and I could not stop crying. That was like one of those moments that I think if Yosef had been there, I would have been able to keep it in, because there would have been like, wouldn't have felt quite as lonely. But this girl who felt good about carpooling with my kids, dropping her kids, like everything. I should watch her kid at the movie theater to sit with my little Zionist kid so she can have a day at Target for a couple hours.
But doesn't it like bring up this like psychological trauma? Like, because we've been hearing these stories, and I think for a lot of Jewish people, we were in this golden age of there's no anti-Semitism anymore. We're in this golden age of like we're good, like we've assimilated, we're all like whatever different sects of Judaism, but like how could that even happen? And now all of a sudden we're stepping into like our grandparents' eyes and seeing how it's like we've been warned. We've been warned that it slowly happens this way. And
Yeah.
it's so frightening. Like what has been your experience? Have your private conversations been like with your family about this topic?
The family in Israel, which is very funny, they see the American news and they're like, what the hell is going on there? Everybody has lost their minds. They see the Canadian news and, Canada is whatever we are in the US, Canada is 10 times worse, which is hard to even fathom.
And we heard
Um,
about the burning buses at the Jewish day school. It's horrible and heartbreaking.
yeah, the last time I was up in Canada for work, and, I would go from time to time, I was there at the end of March. Every single street corner had, signs for Intifada, and it was gross. It was a mess. And you could see, I hate to put it this way, but sort of the ghettoification of Toronto, that all of the Jews were lumped into a handful of densely populated neighborhoods. And this was not just a matter of being within walking distance of a shul or within an eruv. This was, one of my best friends for 20 years. She's very secular. She will do a Hanukkah party like nobody, but she's not going to do keeping Shabbat or any of this other stuff. She doesn't eat kosher. She'll eat a shrimp from anywhere, And she lives in one of these densely populated Jewish communities. And I asked her point blank last time I was there, I was like, your house is amazing, but with kids, don't you want more of a yard? Don't you want to, live in the middle of nowhere? If you don't go to shul, like, why do you have to live in the middle of here? She was like, I would not feel safe. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to move like 10 minutes out of this area. That's terrifying. That's where I think the US is going to be headed. That the Jews who feel comfortable in all these like, the Massapequas and the random towns in New Jersey and these like spots in, like if you're a Jew in Poughkeepsie, New York or something, I think not that these Jews are going to necessarily immediately move far away or into the city or into the Teanex and Great Necks, but they're going to be clustered. They're going to be more tightly clustered for protection reasons, that we're going to be like redoing this concept of shtetl until you can shtetl no longer.
That's very like reminiscent a little bit, unfortunately.
I
What does
think
it feel
Canada
like?
is just ahead of the US in everything. Canada was ahead of us on marijuana legalization. Canada was ahead of us on gay marriage. And, there are a lot of policies that have nothing to do with the Jews, but have everything to do with the way I think society and culture moves that shape a lot of different things. And some of these things are wonderful. Some of these things are less wonderful. Yeah, like whatever, that's a grab bag. That has nothing to do with this. But what I do think is that Canada, because it's a smaller group of people, it's only 40 million people there, they have this opportunity to sort of like test cultural moments before the US does. And I think the cultural moment for the Jews in Canada is this shtetlification of Jewish culture in the biggest cities. And I think that's what is going to come to the US. And I think a lot of people who don't feel comfortable doing that, or who are already on the edge, or maybe don't have the means, not everybody is going to be able to pour money into Great Neck. Not everybody has $2 million for a house. And there's also only so much land and property in any of these places, whether it's North Miami Beach, Teaneck, Great Neck, Hartsdale, whatever. There's going to be a bunch of people who say, screw it, I'm just going to go to Israel.
I've also seen people go the other way. I've seen Jewish people that just like keep their head down, don't make noise. I'm like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah. I think birds of a feather kind of thing. And I think because I am not that way. I don't have quite as many friends who are keep their head down. I feel pretty lucky that most of my friends feel proud of who they are and are willing to speak about it. Some friends more than others. Some friends are, scared of making waves at work or.
Yeah, I've seen it at work,
Yeah, the work thing is probably where the few quieter friends that I have are the quietest.
Yeah. So what is it like for you in Israel now? And I'm not just talking about the war, I'm talking about in general, the feeling. I know that Israelis look at the news and go like America's lost its mind and Europe too. But what's the general feeling like in Israel being surrounded by a Jewish community?
So that is really good. I have to tell you, you have to take everything in Israel, better than anyone, that everything is taken with a grain of salt. So, Israelis are Israeli.
They're
Line
like,
culture.
yeah, beseder. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and like
okay.
certain things are really wonderful and certain things like I have to kind of grit my teeth and get through it. Like line culture doesn't really make sense here. You know what I mean? Door holding culture, not so much.
Not
I
polite
spent
society.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
formal
but
either.
yes, yes. Oh my gosh, I sent my kids dressed in nice shul clothing to my mother-in-law's shloshim, and I got a call from my sister-in-law later, and she was like, "Mommy, your kids look Amish. What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, that's their shul clothing. It's their grandmother's shloshim. You put on
Yep.
your nice clothing. What are you talking about?"
Just a pair of
She was like,
shorts and a white shirt. Like,
"Yeah." Basically, she was like, "No, you wear jeans just as long as they're not ribbed. They're good." It's like, okay, I love that for you.
the informality. Yep.
Oh my
What's been the
gosh.
biggest? Have you lived in Israel before? I know that your
Yeah,
husband is Israeli.
so we've come for long periods of time for many years. We took a break there during the pandemic, obviously. And when I was a teenager, I was here for a really long time. So, Israel has like a lot of really wonderful, charming attributes. If you're not familiar with Israeli culture, I feel like it
It's
might take
culture
getting
shock.
used to. Yeah, you might be like, wait, what?
Do you have some more like culture shock moments, or what causes you culture shock this time around that you forgot maybe?
Little things, really little things. I don't like the pizza. And I know people are going to maybe get very upset about that. I feel like corn has no place on pizza.
The,
You know,
the,
all
the
the
green
sesame.
olives on the pizza.
No, I'm pro olive.
That's what's missing in America is the green olives on the pizza. I'd have to say.
Yeah. I would do the olives all day. But the corn, it's not ethical. The expense of cars,
Mm.
just how expensive cars are is shocking to me. And just like there's like weird little cultural things, people will offer you life advice you never asked for. Everyone is your like kind of rude great aunt, where they'll look at you and
Yeah.
be like, you don't look so good today. And then they'll give you like a list of 15 things you could and should be doing when they also don't look so good today.
It's out of love, right?
Yeah.
Concern. Okay, so you're in Israel for 2 weeks now, so
Yeah.
far. And like, have you registered the kids and put them in schools? Like, what is your day
Yes.
to day looking like? Are you working remotely?
I'm working remotely. The timing is a little strange. It's funny. I do like 4 hours in the early morning, and then I take a sort of midday work siesta, which, there's no sleep, but like I do all my regular life stuff that needs to get done. And then I kind of match New York hours to work for the morning New York time. So I can be working with people in real time, at least in the mornings. And, if they send me something late in the day, then I get to it very early the next morning. So that's a little bit challenging, but so far so good. The kids are getting enrolled in school. One thing that I think is really cool is if you are Jewish in the States or anywhere outside of Israel, that Jewish day school tuition is an actual fortune, especially if you have a lot of kids like I do. And here, you basically just opt into it. You can opt into secular school, which is free, the free public secular school. There are also free or nearly free religious schools. And also school is 6 days a week here, which I think people don't expect.
Thursday through Sunday? No, wait, Sunday
No, you have
through...
Friday also. You have Sunday. So I can't tell you what your school is going to be like because they're all similar, but depending on the school and the district and the city, they could have slightly different hours. But they're all Sunday through Friday. There's no school on Shabbat. But Friday is like a half day. Friday, usually you get out, depending on the age and the school and the focus of the school, anywhere between 12 and 1 o'clock. It could be as early as 11:30. So you're home for lunch on Fridays. The other days, my kids will be attending a school where 3 days a week, they have short days. They're there from 8 till about 1. And 3 days a week, they're there from 8 till about 3:30.
Is that strange that it's not consistent?
Yeah, it's like the block scheduling thing that you never really got to until you got to high school. But like, it doesn't matter. You're in first grade. Figure it out.
And what about the Hebrew part of it? Are your kids just jumping in with the Hebrew?
They're all at different levels. My oldest daughter is probably the most comfortable. She doesn't feel comfortable speaking very much, but if you speak to her, she understands. Her reading and writing is really perfect. Another one of my sons can read and write like a champion. There's no sign he can't read and sort of get to the bottom of, but conversations are difficult for him. Another one of my kids, you can speak to him all day, but reading and writing, no. So that's what Ulpan is for.
They'll pick it up this year? They're just going into an Israeli school? Or
Yeah.
are they doing supplemental work? Or
Yeah, so we have a tutor for them a couple hours a week. They're going to do supplemental work in the school as well. And, it'll work out. We are not the first family to move to another country with school-age children. Your kids are about to do it. I feel like, during the height of the madness in Ukraine, there were I think 50,000 people came from Ukraine to Israel. All the schools are sort of understanding and accommodating. For the most part, they're expecting more Eastern European languages than English to be the problem, but whatever.
I think everybody speaks English anyway, but
maybe not in a lot.
All Hebrew? Is it hard?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. I'm sure you remember years ago, all of the signs were in Hebrew, in Arabic, and sometimes in English. Now, very few signs are in English. They're all in Hebrew, Arabic, and Russian.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow.
Which is funny because Eilat is really a Mizrahi city. I'm not sure why a good chunk of Ukraine and Russia ended up here. I don't know how they picked this spot on the map. I'm grateful. Very nice people, but it's just very funny to watch the demographics changing because everywhere I go and I'm like, I don't know the word for that in Hebrew. And someone will turn to me and they just start speaking Russian, like as if I'm going to match their Russian. Like, sorry.
Oh, funny. I guess the population's exploded in Eilat because it used to be a very small population.
Yeah, it's really big. And there's like trailers everywhere. They're nice trailers, not the way we think of American trailers, but like good temporary housing trailers. So there's trailers all over the city for the kids who had to evacuate the north. And because the schools are just like overflowing, they have these temporary schools. Like if you came from kibbutz anywhere, that you don't get broken apart from your kind of fellow classmates and your level, that instead of just being the one random kid inserted into an Eilat class, that you get to be with your sort of peers that you're familiar with, but maybe in a trailer.
So a lot of the refugees came down to the south, right? They either went...
All the hotels are full. I know this is like big holiday time, like everybody's on vacation, but half of the hotels were taken anyway because the refugees needed places to go. There were entire apartment buildings that were like not ready to be inhabited, that the government just said, listen, before they can be sold as condos, we're going to make them ready real quick They're not going to be perfect. And all of the residents, my father-in-law included, he manages a building here. And because he's an old Israeli man, he's been saving mattresses and TVs and refrigerators and whatever in the giant mamad of the building. He took me through a tour of this giant mamad in the bottom of the building. And I see like 20 refrigerators, 50 mattresses, bed frames, everything. And I was like, Saba, what are you doing? This is crazy. Do you have like a hoarding thing I don't know about? Your home looks really nice. He says, no, there's going to be a war at some point. And when there is, I don't want anyone to say I have nowhere to sleep. That was a year ago. He knew. But there's always a war. He fought in all of them, you know? He just stopped fighting like 10 years ago.
Did he know, or did he just assume that that's how Israel is, that there's always a war?
Yeah, he knows every 10 years there's going to be some big one, and there's going to be some group of people, or there's going to be a war outside of Israel, and there's going to be like refugees coming from somewhere. And there's going to be a few thousand people that need places to sleep and don't have refrigerators. And so every time someone moved out of an apartment and said, my refrigerator works, but I'm not taking it with me to Tel Aviv or whatever, he would store it in the basement.
Wow, what a great guy.
Yeah, he's really cool. So when all the refugees started coming from the kibbutzes and the north and everywhere, it's a Hermon. I've got refrigerators.
That's so great. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's so great. Wow, 80,000 people still. I mean, I heard that in the north, there's no school because they've evacuated the people, so they have to absorb them in different places. I guess that's what they're doing.
Yeah. I have a friend whose family is in Metula. It's not good. They're in manufacturing. They have a consumer products company. And between the constant rockets and missiles and what happened with the Druze population a few days ago, they had to shut the factory down for a while and kind of move everyone out of there. They're pretty heartbroken.
Yeah. I hope it ends soon.
Me too.
How has the reception been with the teachers, with the neighbors, like that you came from America to come and live in Israel?
Mixed, really mixed. Everyone's been very nice. Everyone's super nice. But what I mean by mixed is some people have been like, no, what are you talking about? We're thinking of running away from here if it gets really bad to go to America. What are you saying? That's not an option anymore? And they're not upset about us. They're upset that what they thought was like their emergency exit is maybe not on the table. And the other half is just really happy to have us.
Is there an emergency exit for anywhere anymore?
The only people who are making comments like that, and it's a very specific cohort, it is people with military age children or about to be. It's people with kids between like 16 and 18 that they know it's their son or daughter's turn to serve, and they're feeling panicked. And I don't blame them. I really don't blame them. I have a lot of friends whose kids are serving right now, and they just don't sleep. They just don't.
What do you want people that are listening to this from abroad to understand about what's happening in Israel right now and about the IDF?
The majority of IDF soldiers are not necessarily soldiers in the way people think of soldiers. They could be medics, they could be photographers, they could be janitors. You could be doing all sorts of different things that have really nothing to do with holding a weapon or using a weapon. I also think that almost every person here understands what it took to build the country to the level that it's at right now. And I think, and this is just my perception, other people may disagree, that a lot of the older people are, there's a sort of sense of we surrender to the idea of faith, of trust, of God. We've been through this many times before, and an understanding that it's going to work out because it has to work out.
Is there any indication of how or when this all ends? Like that people are talking about, or are they talking about like they expect it to get worse before it gets better?
I will tell you that my friends in Jaffa today were talking about hearing booms. Explosions here are called booms, and everybody was in the group chat going back and forth, and it turns out there were training exercises in Jaffa. Now, you and I both know if they're training in Jaffa, it means they're training to go out of the regular borders of Israel. So I don't know when it ends. I can't imagine anyone could give us a really good answer. I know I can't. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, but God willing, it gets worse quickly and ends quickly, and we can all move on, and a new chapter of history starts, and hopefully it's a very uneventful one, and everyone just complains about dumb stuff again. That was the best,
Was moving to Israel the right decision?
I think so. Like what's the psychology term? Confirmation bias. You look for anything that like confirms that what you're doing is the right thing. So I don't know. I think it's the right thing to be with family. We'll find out. Only time will tell. We'll have to revisit that in like 10 years based on the amount of therapy my kids are in.
Bryce, I will see you in Israel. We have to revisit this
Yeah,
conversation.
I'm gonna
Or
come
I'm
visit
on the
you.
way. Yes, I'm so excited. I have to say, like, I found you online and I was like, wait a second, I know this story. It
It's
was
your
really
story.
something. It's our story.
Yeah,
It's crazy. Wow. So we're gonna connect in Israel.
yeah. I'm very excited about that.
Me, me too. And stay safe. Stay safe. I hear this weekend might be a little bit rough. So are you sleeping in the mamad?
No, I'm not gonna sleep in the mamad, which maybe is not the best decision. We've been through just in the past 2 weeks, we've had a handful of, sirens, red alerts, whatever. And I know this is terrible, but I think I'm getting like Israeli-ish about it, where I'm like, ugh,
Just
we'll
used to
get
it.
through it. Yeah, you know,
There's
it's
no
not
other
that
choice.
big of an apartment. Like if this was like a 6-story home and I had to run down many flights of stairs, it's an apartment. I
Yeah.
can run 30 feet. I can handle it. And if I can't, then I have other problems that are bigger than that.
All right, we will connect in Israel, and I wish you the best. I really do. And it's been a
Thank you.
pleasure connecting with you.
Thanks for having me, Hadass.
Thank you, Bryce. All right, we're gonna stay in touch. Hopefully this will
Yeah.
be over. Maybe it'll be over this year. It's gotta
Yeah.
end soon. It's gotta end at some point, right? It can't go on forever. Well, who knows, right?
We're finding out.
Stay safe, my dear. Stay safe.
You. Bye.
Of course, this war won't end until all the hostages are home, and this weekend we celebrate a milestone, a sad one, but it is the 5th birthday of one of the youngest hostages, Ariel Beavis. Ariel, we are thinking of you on your 5th birthday. We're thinking of your younger brother, Kfir, of your family, and of all of the 115 hostages that are still being held captive against their will in Gaza. And thank you for making it all the way to the end of this conversation. Of course, if you made it this far, you must find this content interesting. Please consider subscribing to the Hadass On Air YouTube channel and sharing it with your friends. By doing so, you send a message to YouTube to push this content out to other people, and you help the channel grow. For that, I am so grateful. So please keep checking back to the channel for more content, and I'll see you later. Bye.